All right, welcome back, White Oak Collective Podcast. Think this is episode 23. We're just talking about it. We're not positive. We didn't want to go back and look.
This is an emergency broadcast, so it was kind of throwing up the sync too.
You will notice when we drop it here in a little bit that it's going to be later than normal. We try to get it uploaded every Tuesday morning, but it's going to be Tuesday afternoon because this is Tuesday morning right now that we're recording this.
We figured out about 8 o'clock last night. You text me.
Yeah, so we had a good 45-minute conversation. That was 2 weeks ago. Yeah. So we were prepared. 2 weeks ago, we had a 45-minute conversation with Stephen Bass of Southern Ag Credit about finance and land. Honestly, thought it was one of our better podcasts we've done.
I did too. I actually had told a few people about listening to it.
Uploaded it to YouTube last night and realized there was no audio. So did the whole thing, thought we were ready, thought we were trying to finally get the hang of this technology crap, and we weren't. So
I do like this background a little bit better. Steven's gone, since nobody's going to have seen the little video clip from that, but if you're watching it, you'll notice Beau's been working hard in the studio and things are starting to come together around here.
Yeah, so we changed things up just a little bit. We've got deer head in here now. That picture, we're gonna move the picture of the dog. This is all if you're watching on YouTube too, by the way. You may see it on Spotify, I'm not sure. But picture of the dog, shout out to Hunter Marlowe. He is a listener, and I went duck hunting with him a few weeks ago and took that picture of his dog, and it's probably my favorite picture I've ever taken. So
I think did you post that whenever you were on that hunt?
I did, okay. Yeah.
I was thinking I'd seen it on your stuff.
Yeah, it's on my Instagram, Beau C. Burns, and you can go see it there. But I was proud of that picture, and I thought it would look good in here. So going to put that behind you, I think. But you can kind of see it over there in the corner. But, yeah, we're getting better. We got some some lights in here now, some different lights, so it doesn't look like we're sitting in an office room.
Yeah. It's not just a white wall behind us like it was. And I hadn't got used to where the camera is now, so I'm sure things will continue to move around.
We're going to keep changing things up, and we've got to change angles when we've got guests here and everything else. But kind of where we're not just rambling today, kind of getting into it. First off, though, I want to say we've been pushing YouTube and telling y'all to listen on YouTube, and I want to say thank you because we had I think our last episode that we actually posted was our most listened to episode, and most of that came off YouTube. So for everybody that's watching there, I appreciate it a lot. And if you can, just go ahead and subscribe while you're listening, because still we had 3 or 4 times the amount of listens that we had subscribers. So if we can get some of those people to subscribe, we'll be in business. And then, to the people that continue to listen on Apple or Spotify or Amazon, we appreciate it. And would love a review if you're liking what we're putting out.
So today gives us an opportunity to actually jump into something you've been talking about for like the last year on being able to do to talk about.
Yeah, so we were fired up about the land financing episode because I've been saying that we were going to talk real estate forever for a year now, and we haven't. And so we finally went kind of in depth on financing land with him, and we were fired up about that. And don't have it. We are going to re-record that. So
this will be a good lead into that whenever that happens, though, I guess, because we talk about kind of getting into buying land.
This is kind of the order that it needed to go in, but
it wasn't the order we were going to do.
No. So anyway, today we're going to talk about buying land. And I've got down, we'll kind of just talk through this. It's not, I don't want to make this like a class or something like that, but I've got 7 steps to buying land, but it's just going to kind of be thoughts and ideas and tips. And I'm sure most of y'all know from listening that Austin is not in the real estate field, but owns real estate himself and has bought real estate before, obviously, and knows a lot about it. So it'll kind of be just kind of a back and forth.
I can talk more from the consumer side, I guess.
Well, you can talk more, or you can ask questions, because a lot of times I know this stuff and I know the tips and tricks and what you need to do from doing it all day, every day, but don't really think about how to tell, explain it as
Yeah.
well. If I'm just sitting here trying to explain it. So I'm glad that this isn't one of those like I did a couple weeks ago where I went solo. I'm glad that you're going to be able to be in here and kind of go back and forth on
Right.
each other.
Yeah. No.
Um,
And,
on
and just kind of look at your notes. I mean, I think it's similar to what we thought through whenever we were doing some of ours, and we've had good experience. Or I guess we bought a house and we bought a piece of land that we want to build a house on. So I had a good experience and a bad experience. So maybe you can kind of chime in on some of that as we go through it, as to like things to look at in working with your realtor, or looking at the land, or just kind of expectations to set, I guess.
Yeah, and and this is tailored to buying land because that's
What?
what I like to
Yeah,
do. Um,
you do
but you
houses,
could,
but you like the land side.
yeah, but that's, I mean, you could tailor it to houses or anything too. I mean, it's going to kind of go. You just tweak it a little bit, and it would go back to buying a house or anything like that. But jumping right into it, first one I've got is to define your goals, and that would be goals, objectives, whatever. By that I mean, what do you want the property for? Um, are you wanting to hunt? Are you wanting to fish? Are you just wanting a little weekend getaway? Are you wanting a place that you might could Airbnb? Are you wanting investment property? I mean, the list goes on. There's tons and tons of different um, reasons to buy land, but that's the first thing you need to do is determine why you want it, because that's going to set up where you want the land to be as far as physical location. It's going to set up um, what you need the land, like, what the timber mix on the land needs to be, size of the land, does it have water on it, anything, like if you're wanting it for investment property, how far is it from the mill, does it have road frontage, can you get to it to get the timber out. um,
Yeah, you're looking at, like, especially on that side of it, like, is it a, for around here, your first thought goes to timber investment. So, like,
mhm.
is it something that, and if you're new to buying land, it's like kind of talking to somebody to understand like what cash flow looks like in a situation like that. So, like, is it something that you're buying a timber investment at different stages of its growth? Is there a certain like time you want to enter the market from when you want some cash flow out of it? Is it something you're doing to, like, maybe you're older, you already have a retirement portfolio, you don't want to put money in the market, so you're looking for something that you can kind of shelter some money into, that's going to be a payout further down the road. So, what age type property, what timber age property are you looking at? Is it pines? Is it hardwoods? That's something I was thinking about from that, I guess, the timber side of agricultural on it.
Yeah,
Um,
as far as investment goes, I mean, it's not like you're going to be getting a dividend or something like that. I mean, when it comes to timber, you're going to get two, potentially three income streams in the
and
whole life of that timber.
mhm.
Now, you're going to get a first thinning, potentially a second thinning, and then a clear cut. That's it. You're not, I mean, in between there, you're not getting any money off of that timber. It's
Yeah,
not like you're getting anything quarterly or yearly or anything like
yeah.
that.
But even on that side, you have lease options and stuff. So if it's something that you just are wanting to own as part of a um as part of your overall, I guess, investment strategy, like, you can generate some other income off of it from leasing it for hunting rights or whatever.
Yeah, that's
Um,
right.
but then I also was thinking, like, some more consistent cash flow streams too that you can look at is, like, depending on what the land type is, there may be CRP options, there may be WRP options for like the wetland program. So there are going to be some, depending on, what type, whether you're just buying bare dirt or buying something that's already planted into a certain timber harvest size. There are some different options you can look at where you can generate some kind of income stream off of it if you're not wanting to utilize it directly.
Yeah, I mean,
Most people are probably, I think that's a segment to talk about. And then the other one is like using it for recreational properties. It's something you want to utilize on your own. That's how I think most people are going to think about it.
cut right there because we just had to, again, technology is messing with us, and we just had a little buzz that you might have heard, you may not have heard.
Had too
But
many chords close together.
yeah, we've got too much going on in here now. But what we were talking about when we cut it was you're talking about for income streams, and you were talking about CRP and WRP. All of that is ways to make money off of your property other than just timber. Um, we'll get into a minute as far as recreational land, and you can still do that type stuff and help your land for recreation. Um,
I think that falls into the kind of talking about income streams. You have your big long term income stream with the timberland, and then if you're looking at it as a recreational property, there may be some avenues for some income stream. But even on them, you may pick up some timber harvest stuff if you want to do some selective stuff.
yeah,
So
and all of it goes. I mean, just kind of jumping back to the theme of the first part is, what do you want this property for?
yeah,
I mean, you can have it for. I mean, everybody. I think most anybody that buys a piece of property is going to want to get a little bit of return on their money. They're not going to want to throw that money away, but they're going to want to use it for some kind of recreation, whether that be hunting,
correct.
fishing, just going to ride four wheelers, something. And that's the good thing about land versus. So I mean, obviously, I like the stock market too, but you can't go hunt on the stock market, and that's why I like land so much. But and then just kind of skipping down to number two, which goes hand in hand, is figure out what type of property will fit your goals. So I don't want to. We'll kind of gear this towards hunting because I don't want to just keep pounding the investment side. But if you're a big turkey hunter and you're chomping at the bit to buy a piece of turkey land, but then you buy a 40-acre clear cut surrounded by clear cut, well, you might not see a
Yeah,
turkey for 20 years. You got to know, but on the flip side, if you're a deer hunter, that clear cut in a couple years might be
the best it'll
great.
ever be. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, so it's whatever you want to do. You just need to know that going into it. You don't want to just buy land because it's affordable and it's in the area that you want it in. It's got to fit whatever you're looking for. And then you got to think about too, the money that it will cost. If you buy something that's not set up already for what you want it for, the money that it will cost to make it what you want it for. I mean, that goes back to a little bit of return on your money. If you're talking about, you would understand this because you're in this business, but if you're wanting to get some pasture land for cattle, but you buy a clear cut that you're going to convert to pasture, well, that's going to be a pretty decent little
yeah.
expense that you're going to have to add to your cost per acre when you're looking at down the road getting rid of the property or getting a little bit of return on your money. How much those cows are actually going to be able to make you when you factor in cost per acre.
Yep. Or even, I mean, and just what the difference is in buying a property like that. If you buy fenced pasture land like that's already got good grass stands and all on it, then you're going to be looking at something that's a higher value, something closer. Like I think that's a starting place though. But now that I think about it, like when you're buying land and you're trying to set those goals, like how much work are you wanting to put into it? Because if you're buying bare dirt, most people would say bare dirt being like a clear cut.
Yeah.
Like it's not in anything. It's not in grass. It's not in rangeland. It's not in timberland. Like I think if you hear people talking about buying bare dirt, that's pretty much what they're talking about in y'all's world, right?
Yep.
So I think that's kind of the starting point. It's probably going to be your lowest, and then
It's your lowest cost to entry, but it's your most, let's say, labor intensive to get it how you would most likely want it.
exactly. Yep.
So,
but it does give you a blank slate that you can kind of you can develop it from that point on how you want it.
and that's a big thing to think about too. And I don't even have that on the list, but I wanted to talk about it for a minute so we can talk about it here. Is, do you want to buy something that's blank slate that you're going to have to? You can set it up exactly how you want, and it's going to be more affordable in the beginning, but you're going to have to put a lot of sweat equity into it. Versus, you want to buy something turnkey that you can buy in August and be hunting in October.
Yeah.
A major thing to think about there is, do you have the equipment to set up a property the way you want it? And even if it's turnkey, do you have the equipment that you're going to need to You know, if you buy a piece of property that's got a 5 acre food plot and all you've got is a hand spreader and a walk behind tiller, you're probably not going to be able to maximize that property
Right.
anyway. So,
Right.
and when we talk to Steven again, that'll be a good thing for him to talk about is, and this is kind of jumping around because we'll talk about finance in a minute, but they can finance equipment too. So, you know, if you buy a blank slate property and can save some money and go ahead and get you a tractor while you're buying it, and let them finance everything and rock and roll and set it up, you know, exactly how you want it.
Yeah.
But that's just something to think about. I mean, there's so many different types of timber makeups and locations, and each location has its own benefit and drawback. And
Yeah, and some of that stuff's like it's tricky. Just kind of from experience. My grandfather does a lot of timberland. That was as he was, I guess, moving through his career and getting close to retirement. That was something he got really big into, and just like being around him, learning from him as he went through it. Like it's just crazy the nuances of stuff you pick up on. You mentioned a little while ago, it made me think about it, like the distance from a mill. So like
mm-hmm,
if it is a a timber track, um, where you can be able to sell your stuff to, because
yeah,
that's going to really cut into your profit. Sometimes you may look at a piece of property and say like, oh well, we're right here on this road. It's going to be easy to get the timber out, and it be like we got some little county roads that have been recently paved, and you can't haul down those unless you get a special permit.
mm-hmm,
They make you take them, and getting the permit depends on how close you are to the dirt. If you're close to the dirt road, that may put you, that may add 20 miles to your loop. So what you think may be an easy out may not be as easy of an out as it is, and it's just like a bunch of little nuanced things like that that I don't know if there's any way to like really cover all of them, but
no. And as far
um,
as and that goes back to location of where you want the property. And if you don't know that, and we'll talk about the benefits of an agent in a little bit, but like there's parts of Mississippi that you can't get rid of wood. I mean,
yeah.
you can have the prettiest pine timber on there that you've ever seen. You can't get rid of it because
Mhm.
you just can't get it to a mill, and you can't get it to a mill that's paying anything. Whereas you come over here, I mean, yeah, timber prices right now are rough, but historically, this side of the state, East Mississippi, I mean, you got some pretty decent timber value. You go more towards the central part of the state right now, and it's rough.
Yep, and you got stuff that could be logged. You'll hear people talk about winter logging or summer logging. You have some properties that are low and flat and stay wet. And um, I know this past year we had a really bad drought, and I was talking to a guy that was working on my pond the other day, and they were talking about there was a track they were trying to log out there not far from where we are that they had completely sunk a track hoe. It was the driest that place had ever been, and it still just was like a bottomless bog. So
Well,
like,
I've got a place for sale right now, which if you're wanting a hunting place, it's a great place, and I've talked about it on here before. It's that 430-acre piece I've got over in Neshoba County. It's an incredible piece, and it is absolutely loaded with timber, but it's going to take a dry year. Last year, you could have cut it when we were in that drought,
right.
but knowing things like that are so important. Because if you were looking strictly a hunting property, that one would be perfect. But if you're looking strictly timber, it's not going to work for you.
Well, and it goes with, and I think you got that listed on here at some point. I think it's later on, but like that part goes into touring the properties, like
Mm-hmm.
really getting an idea of getting with somebody, riding around, taking a look at it, kind of getting boots on the ground, see what the makeup of it is and how much of it. There may be a place, and it may half of it or a quarter of it may be that you're never going to be able to touch, but
Yep.
there may be enough on the rest of it to justify making that decision to purchase it.
Yeah, and just kind of a little side note because this has been a call that I've gotten a ton lately, and it goes back to timber. And I don't want to make this all about. I don't want to make this a timber podcast, but I've had so many calls lately, and I know that it's just from misinformation. It's not from. It's just being told the wrong thing. But so many people have called me, "Hey, I'm looking for a piece of property. I want to be able to buy the property, sell some timber, not all my timber, sell some timber, pay for my land, have it free and clear." It's not going to happen. It's not a reality this day and age with timber prices like they are. with pulpwood, especially like it is, you're just not. That's not a reality. There's ways to lower your investment through timber harvest and stuff like that, but as far as paying your property off right away, it's not going to happen.
Oh, and property size too is probably another big thing that um, you see people get in trouble with is like because we'll probably have that situation with the land that we bought. It's like 46 acres. Well, whenever it's like 20-year-old stuff, so it's not far from harvest. And I'm not sure what we're going to do with the overall harvest because we bought ours to be a home place. So like some of it on the front, I don't know what we're going to do. But like when you start getting those smaller and smaller tracks, like if we were on the other end of the spectrum, we weren't getting ready for like a final harvest and we were getting ready for a thinning or something, it'd be almost impossible to get somebody to come in there unless one of your neighbors was having some timber work done and you could just kind of piggyback off a crew already being there.
Yeah, I mean, you you might can find you a good looking little 40-acre block right now that's got great timber, but you're not paying some. I mean, you could not pay somebody to come cut it right now versus back in the day you might get a little return on your money there. Right now, it's I've got 33 acres that need thinning super bad, but it's not happening right now.
And that's
Um,
not to steer you away from that. It's just like things to be aware
oh
of
yeah,
that you're
no,
going to run
this is not
into.
to
Like,
steer. It's not to steer anybody in any direction. It's about buying land, and
and
these are
just
things that you need to know
on the front end.
going into it because it's not it's not cheap buying land, and most people that are buying land have already. I mean, I would say let's just say 99.9% of people already own a house. So this is a second investment of real estate. Like you can't you can't really afford to make mistakes when
Right.
it goes to buying this stuff.
Right.
So talking about the and we'll kind of jump back, but talking about the investment of it, a big thing is how are you going to pay for it? Are you going to pay for it in cash or are you going to finance it? And we won't go in too much depth on that because when we get Steven back in here, we'll go 45 to an hour on financing. Um, but that'll let you develop your budget because that's going to tell you really more than anything. You're going to set your objectives and your goals and your wants and your needs of your property, but then your budget's going to tell you whether that's a reality or not.
Mhm.
And sometimes it may be okay. Maybe I need to wait a year before I go do this. If it's going to be the difference in a 40-acre block versus a 75-acre block, if you just wait a little while, well, that kind of changes everything. Um, and if you're going to finance it, I'll speak to a local lender, but if you're local around here, I will give him a shout out. I would give Steven at Southern Ag a call and they'll kind of help walk you through this stuff. Um,
Well, it's going to be, I mean, pretty safe to say that it's either going to be the biggest purchase or one of the biggest purchases you ever
mm-hmm,
make in your life.
mm-hmm.
Like your house may be number one, um, or depending on what the property looks like, it may be number one. But it's going to be one of those. It's like it's got to don't rush the process. Like
Yeah.
go through the steps, make sure you find something that you really look for. Like that's what we did with the property that we bought. Gosh, I bet we looked for 6 or 7 years whenever we knew the area we wanted to be in. Because we were looking at something like when we set our goals, we wanted to have a place to build a home. We wanted a place that had enough land around it where it wasn't like a huge property to maintain there around the house, but it was, enough we could have a deer stand too
Be
on the
secluded at
property,
least.
be secluded, not have neighbors right on top of us. We wanted to have a pond. So we just had like a few little things like that we wanted, and we knew the area that we wanted to be in, right? So, um, I mean,
And
it
you
took
can
a
always trade up. I mean, that's a great, I mean, if you don't want to wait forever, start with a smaller property, knowing that you're going to put a little sweat equity into it, turn around, sell it. But you can't get in a rush with that either because you don't know how long it's going to take you to sell your property. These things, I mean, the land market right now is really good, but it's still not going. You're not going to sell it in a day.
right.
So you got to be prepared for that. But going back to financing too, they it's what lenders do every single day. So they're going to be able to tell you, and they're not going to let you. Just like I'm going off of what he said in the long lost podcast we did with him, but
The long lost podcast.
He's not going to, they have to look out for risk too. So they're not going to let you just spend that money on something that's crazy.
Because it's their money.
Yeah. I mean, you're spending their money. They've got to know that if something happens or if you quit paying, that they can get that money back.
Yeah.
So
that's like I tell everybody anytime somebody asks me if I, own a house or own a land, that kind of thing. I'm like, no, I owe a house and I owe a land.
I will. Maybe I will own it one day, but right now the bank owns it.
Yeah, I owe some.
Well, and we'll move on after this. But the best thing about Steven, just to give him one more shout out here, is he's a forester. So all this stuff we're talking about with timber and recreation and all that, he understands that because he's a forester. I mean, he works at Southern Ag, but he's got a forestry degree. So the next one I've got on here will kind of go back to what type of property meets your goals, but it's talking about how far away from your house do you want your property, because that's going to set up, well, number one, say you're wanting to hunt ducks and you're over here with us in East Mississippi. Well, you're going to have to get to the Delta. I mean, you may can get over into Alabama by the time Bigby, but then you start talking about, do I have to have a camp house? Because you may, before you buy it, in your head think you're going to drive 2.5 hours or 2 hours to hunt and then come back. You're just not going to get much use out of your property that way. I mean, it's just, hell, I don't think you think this is as bad because you drive.
I was just about to joke about how, like, if it's further than 10 minutes from Beau's house, it's too far. Unless he knows he's going turkey hunting or knows he's going
turkey hunting. I don't care. I'll drive as far as turkey I need to drive.
Duck hunting, that's about the only things that'll get him in the truck. But if it's about a 15-minute drive,
I've got a lot better deer hunting place that I was hunting that I gave up last year because it was about 50 minutes from my house, and that's just not. I mean,
I kind of drive all the time though. I'm used to driving, going all the way back to get my license, from driving to school, driving to work. I'm just used to living out. Whereas, Beau's not. He's got to be close. It needs to be easy reach.
Yeah, I mean, I guarantee a lot of people are like that too. Because I don't want to. I mean, especially if you want to, and if you have a flexible job where you might can hunt an afternoon or two, but you can't afford to leave at noon. I mean, you want somewhere, if you're wanting to deer hunt, you want somewhere that you can slip out and be there at least in 30 minutes or so.
Yeah, and it goes with because it's almost the same thing. Like, I know some people that have like a second home. Let's say a home, like basically like they have a place to go to that's somewhere else, whether it's like a coast place or mountain place or whatever. And it kind of, I think of those being the same way with the property, and the proximity is going to dictate how you use it and how often you get to use it. And so, like, if you're in that 30 to 55-minute range, well, it's something that you can run to in a day easily. You can go there and back. You can hunt the afternoon and come back home. Like, yeah, you'll be an hour later, but like it's in that kind of like acceptable driving range for most people. You start getting in that 2 to 3 hour range, and then you're kind of looking at, it is going to be an overnight deal. I am going to have to stay, but it's one of those things that like you can do every weekend or you can do every couple of weekends because it's within that acceptable range. And if you start going over, 3 to 6 hours or so, then you start pushing into like, man, I really need to be there for 3 days.
Yeah.
Like it's hard to run over there Friday night, hunt Saturday, and justify coming back if it's in that 4 to 7 range.
Yeah. And I mean, you can get away with, going back to ducks. I've just thinking about ducks a lot lately, but you don't have to have anything nice to stay in, but you have to put something in your budget if you're going to say you've got somewhere in the Delta 3 hours from here. I mean, you can get a little camper, a little $5,000 camper, but
it's something I've picked up just from hunting with people and from just hunting around ourselves. The further away it is, the least it requires. Like, think about it. Like when you go on trips, stuff like that, like if you just had a cot with a tent over it, 3 states over that you were going turkey hunting in, you'd be fired up about it.
Yeah.
Now, 15 minutes away, all you had was a tarp with a cot. You'd be like, I'm just going to go back to the house.
Yeah. No, I mean, that makes sense.
It
But
really, the further you get away, like the cooler it gets almost. Like I can do with less, but the closer you are to home, the more comfort you're going to end up wanting.
yeah, I mean, I agree with that. And it all goes back to this is all of these steps are so connected, but it goes back to your budget and what you want. Like if it's 3 hours away and you need somewhere to stay, well, you can get, like I said, a little $5,000 camper or something and park it there. But you got to know, are you going to run a generator the whole time, or are you going to do you have power hookups or any of that? And that just goes into budget and the $5,000. I mean, that goes into, you need to budget that for the property. You don't need to think, oh, I'll buy the property and then figure the rest out later. You need to have a plan. If not, you're just kind of not. You're not gonna get to use your property the way that you want to. All right. This next one, I want to be able to discuss benefits of using a land agent without sounding like a sales pitch. So you're gonna have to help me on that, because there is so many benefits, and I wouldn't say there's a single detriment to using a land agent, but I don't want to sound like, hey, come use me. There's tons and tons of great land agents around, and a lot of you listen that aren't even in my licensed area. So, and actually, we got this is a side note, but shout out to the two. We have a new listener from Indonesia and a new listener from Austria. So, shout out to y'all. But
very cool.
Anyway,
random. I don't like to travel, but Austria is somewhere I've always had like.
Anytime I think about Austria, I just think about, isn't that where Schwarzenegger's from?
I don't know that.
Maybe it's
I'm
him.
not good with people's names. Maybe it's him.
Arnold Schwarzenegger. It could be.
Maybe
him.
you.
Could be him. No, they're not. They're not watching on YouTube. They're listening on Spotify.
Gotcha.
So,
all right.
Well, hey, Mr. Fella from Indonesia or lady, go subscribe on YouTube. But anyway, so just kind of getting the money side of things understood, and a lot of people don't understand this right off the bat, is I'm not going to say never, because sometimes you do, but 99% of the time as a buyer, you don't pay your agent.
Right.
Your agent is you're your client's agent, but the seller is paying that commission at closing. So a lot of people are scared to use agents because they don't want to pay that additional fee on top of buying the land. Well, that you're not. I mean, and like, again, I'm not going to say never, but
it's on the seller side.
I've never had a buyer pay me, and been doing this now for 5 years. So, there is situations where they do, but it's very, very, very rare. 99% of the time the seller pays. So again, that goes back to, there's no downside. You're not losing out on anything by using a land agent.
You asked the question about the land agent deal without making it sound like a sales pitch. And I joked about this on the podcast with Steven. But like, even within, and I won't call any names, but like even within your group, like if somebody came to me and wanted to look at a house, I'd probably tell them to go to somebody that does houses with you.
Yeah.
Over coming to you.
Yeah.
No offense.
No, I agree 100%.
But on the reverse of that, like if somebody's wanting to buy some land, I wouldn't send them there for the land. I'd send them to one of y'all that do the land side.
Yeah, and everybody knows this. So in my group, we'll just shout her out. Camille is by far the number one residential agent, and I would send, unless it's a friend of mine or something, if it's just somebody that calls our office and they're wanting to buy a house, I'm sending them her way.
Yeah.
But again, she would do the same thing for me when it comes to land.
But my joke the other day with Steven was that, like, you can always tell the difference, because if you see people, like, see ads running or whatever, or just are looking online for different agents, like, you can, my way of sorting them out is the land agents typically aren't putting up the pictures of the deer track saying it's loaded with deer. And that's just a joke. If you ever see what I'm talking about, like every property that somebody's not in it, it's just like, oh, here's a track, here you go. Whereas you're going to get that value add in talking with somebody that's a land agent. They're kind of moving past that part of it. Yeah. It's kind of like, that's where you start getting in those conversations like we talked about earlier on, like, why do you want it? What are you going to do with it? Like they're not just trying to push it from that perspective, I guess is the way I see it. From the consumer side, that's how I see it.
Well, and I've got on here next to tour a lot of properties before you make a decision on one. But also, as far as the land agent goes too, I would suggest that if you're not stuck with the first agent you call. I mean, if you call an agent and go look at a property or just talk to them on the phone, ask them these questions. Ask them about timber. The number one question, and I brought it up on the podcast with Steven, so nobody heard it. The number one thing I would ask an agent when I'm talking to them about buying land is, do you own land? That's the number one thing, because if somebody doesn't trust land as an investment enough to do it themselves, how do you want them to guide you into making the second biggest close, of investment of your life when they don't invest in it themselves?
Right.
I'm not gonna, if I'm wanting to know about investing in stocks and stuff, I'm going to call a financial advisor. I'm not going to ask them about land, and they're not going to ask me about stocks.
But even to that degree, though, you're still going to be like that. The person you choose for that, you're probably going to be looking at somebody that knows and understands. I have land, I have stocks.
Yeah.
You're gonna want somebody that can understand the full picture whenever you're talking to that individual too.
Yeah.
So it's just a connection point to find somebody that's got similarities with you, similar beliefs with you. Not to be exact. I mean, you don't want to get too, I guess,
and you want somebody that's got the knowledge.
Thinking.
You just want somebody that's got the knowledge for what you want. I mean, you don't want somebody to be looking. You don't want to call somebody up and say, "Hey, I'm looking for 100-acre duck farm," and this person's never duck hunted before, because they'll scour the internet, and every agent that says great duck hunting, they're just going to send you those properties, and they may be. I mean, they don't listen. But I won't call anybody by name. But there's a property listed right here in East Mississippi right now that says great duck hunting. No, it's not. You may kill 3 wood ducks every morning, but that's not, a duck hunter's not looking for that. They're not looking to kill mergansers and wood ducks.
I know you always get on me for getting a sidetrack, but when you said duck farm, I had to laugh because about a year ago we were with my cousin, and he was talking about they were getting engaged. I mean, somebody on their duck farm. So like in our head, we were thinking kind of what you were talking about, like, oh, they got a. It seems like farms a popular terminology now for whoever if you got recreational land, people call it their farm.
Yeah.
So like we thought that's what he was talking about. We're like, well, like what kind of ducks they have? He's like, he's got like 1,000 ducks. And we're starting like now, like the wheels were going. Like it's kind of funny. Like what do you mean? He's like, oh, he like feeds them. He's got houses. We're like, wait a minute, you're talking about like a commercial duck? Like he's got like a chicken farm, but it's duck. Yeah, it's a duck farm. We're like, man, you lost us. We were completely. We were completely off on that. That was the first I had ran into.
I've never seen any duck farms. Seen plenty of chicken farms.
We were really confused with that whenever you said duck farm, that's where my brain went immediately.
And so just continuing talking about an agent. Another good thing about an agent that's actually experienced in doing this kind of stuff is you can take that list of objectives and goals, wants, needs, all that, and just kind of pass that off to them and say, here's what I want. And they should be able to come back with multiple properties that are going to fit what you are looking for.
Well, they can kind of look for you. It doesn't necessarily have to be something that's necessarily on the market or listed with you.
Well, that's the good thing is there's a lot of times we'll know about properties that aren't on the market, or, guys that just came to us. There's a big tract in Lauderdale County right now. The guy just came to me and said, look, I'm not listing my property, but if you have somebody looking in this area for this type of property, call me. I'll sell it. And you won't ever, if you search by yourself on land.com or LandWatch, whatever, you're never going to see that property, but it may be exactly what you need.
Yeah.
And a lot of the times, and it's not just me or whatever, obviously most land agents have those properties that's kind of in their back pocket that they could sell. Just kind of getting past that, but still in the same realm, tour a bunch of properties. When your agent will hopefully get you a handful of properties that fit your criteria. Look at look at as many as you can before you. I mean, you might fall in love with the very first one you look at, but at least go look at 2 or 3 or 4 before you make the offer on the first one, because it just, you may think that it fits perfectly, but there may be things that you don't, because you've only looked at that property, you don't understand what could be better or what's bad about that property until you look at another one. So I'd never recommend putting an offer in on a property on the first one you see without at least looking at more.
If you haven't ever done
Yeah,
any
no,
kind of,
no. If you've bought and sold tons of properties and you're looking for a timber investment and you come along a piece that you know is going to work perfect, then yeah. But I'm kind of talking
to the new buyer.
Yeah, I feel like this whole conversation is skewed towards somebody that's never bought a piece of land, or maybe they bought one piece of land before or something like that. And then, getting past that, once you do look at those properties and decide on one you want, another benefit to the agent is they're going to help you with that offer. They're not going to let you offer more than you should. They're going to know the ins and outs and what you need to include in that offer, as far as, what kind of deed you're going to get, what there may be. You make a work in, we were talking about equipment earlier. They may have a tractor on site. You work that into the deal, stuff like that. Then the biggest thing is that their team that they've put together just through time that can help you get it closed. And that, as far as attorneys, we've got foresters that work with us, that work for us at White Oak Properties, that, going back to the timber, we can go get that thing cruised before you make the offer, and we'll know what the timber's worth. Yeah, there's some upfront expense to that, but it's not much, especially if you're trying to buy it as an investment and want to know what your timber's worth before you make that offer. But then, yeah, the attorneys that you can trust to work out the title work, and I'm going to get the attorney I use most often. He's wanting to come on. I'm going to get him on to talk title and all that. But especially around here, title on land can get tricky with heirs and everything like that. So you just won't.
And using a land agent, I'll say this, because without having to keep referring to the Lost podcast, it's something Steven talked about from his side of it. But I think the same thing on the land agent side. Like, just by the nature of what you do, you have forester connections, you have dirt work connections, you have mulching connections. Like, there's kind of like somebody that kind of falls into all those pieces of the puzzle that, like, they can be part of that whole process and look at it and say, well, this is what your value is on the timber. This is what it's going to cost to put a house pad in. This is what it's going to cost to put a pond in. This is what it's going to cost to do. If you want to mulch this whole section here, this is what it's going to cost. Like, you kind of got the pieces built in. And I would say land agents in general are probably the land agent side, as opposed to the residential agent side. You're probably going to find people that have those connections kind of already built in, that can at least give you an idea from a start what it's going to look like.
Yeah, it's just like any job, and just and where it doesn't sound like we're throwing shade at residential agents. I mean, that's going to be the same thing as far
because
as
you have residential. It's not like we're just talking about the land. We're talking about just like we talking about, if somebody asked me for a house, I'd send them to Camille, I wouldn't send them to you.
Yeah, but also, like, with a house, which, granted, I do think I think I've got a good connection with the best painter around here. But people like that, I mean, these residential agents, they're going to have connections with painters and flooring guys and stuff like that. Whereas we're going to have connections with like you say, the loggers, the foresters, the mulchers, people like that.
It's a more like, some people do all, but there are also people that kind of specialize in different parts of it.
Yeah, I mean, I do everything. I sell houses. I love selling land because I like land. I own land. I mean, that's it is, to each their own. But yeah, and like I said, that's kind of, once you get your offer accepted, your agent's just going to kind of take it from there. If you are dead set on doing it by yourself, find you a good attorney that you can trust to close it out for you. But again, an agent could kind of do that for you. And if you're using an agent, then they'll just kind of take it from there. And next thing you know, you'll be getting the keys to your property.
Yeah, I'm interested if he'll come on and talk about that, because I
He
know
is.
I've seen some stuff
He's
before, like, and then it really is being able to trust that attorney because, like, I've seen some before that, like, an attorney may look at some of that airship stuff and be like, "Don't touch this,"
Yep.
and then you make him, you can find somebody that'll do it.
Yep.
But
well, there's a reason. That's the reason a bunch of these deeds are messed up is
Yeah.
because somewhere along the way, a half-assed attorney let it slide,
Yep.
and now a good attorney's having to fix it to make
Yeah.
sure that you get good title to your property.
So
You don't want somebody coming along. You don't want to put a bunch of money and food plots and whatever else into your property, and then 5 years down the road, some long lost son is coming saying that he's got legal title to that property.
Yep. So we can save all that conversation for when he comes
we'll talk
on,
with
but
him when he comes on.
I would like to talk to him about that. It's pretty cool. I think it's an interesting side of it, and it's cool seeing how like old some of the deeds and stuff go back on properties.
I did one last year that the deed is actually that 40-acre piece I bought. The deed was handwritten. It was from 1890 something.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
That's wild.
Yeah, it had not changed hands. It hadn't changed family hands from 1890 to 2023. Pretty wild.
That is wild. So some of that stuff's kind of cool. Like you can kind of find out a little bit of stuff about the property too that way.
So that's all I've got on buying land. Like I said, we hate that we didn't get the interview with Steven, but it is going to work out that he's going to come back on and to kind of dive deeper into this because we kind of, we skimmed over financing and stuff like that. And he knows.
He better be ready to bring it even better this next time since we've hyped it up so much and he's got to redo it.
Now people actually know it's coming.
Yeah, he can't be dead when he comes in. He's got to even do more.
So we've also got, we're just kind of wrapping things up. We've also got the Forestry Commission coming on in a couple weeks to talk.
Maybe the next episode, but probably the 1st of March.
Yeah, probably going to be the 1st of March. But they're going to, we talked to them, or Austin talked to them last year. They're coming back on. That's going to be a good one. Got a guest lined up. Well, not lined up yet, but they've committed to coming on here to talk quail and work with quail and habitat and stuff like that. So that's going to be really good. And then a couple other things in the works. So got some good stuff coming up. Obviously, we have turkey season coming up, so we'll have plenty to talk about there.
Trying to not jump into that as quick as we did last year.
Yeah, we don't want to take up 3 months just on turkeys, but it may get to that point. We'll see. If you have any good guest recommendations or people that you might think would come on, DM us or shoot us an email or whatever else. Let us know. Again, please go subscribe on YouTube, follow us on Instagram, write us a review on Spotify, Apple, wherever.
Did you get some new hats in?
I did get some new hats. If you want one of these hats, shoot me a DM and I can set it up and we can get one sent your way. I don't know if we can ship to Indonesia, but if it's close,
you can figure it out.
We'll get it sent your way. All right. If y'all are still listening at this point, we sure do appreciate it. Y'all are our loyal listeners. And sorry for the delay in getting this thing out, but we will see y'all again in 2 weeks.
Oh, it was a comfortable episode.